Sup guys, I'm Kel, Red Zone MTG, and welcome to a brand new Commander deck strategy video. This is actually the first Commander deck strategy video that I made after the kind of soft relaunch of this channel. I'm going to be focusing a lot more on deck strategy videos and Commander content in general. Also, this channel is very, very small, so if you like this video, then maybe share it with your friends, comment, subscribe, like, all that stuff. This channel is super small, and I could really, really use the help. Without further ado, let's crack into this. You can kind of see some foreboding spoilers here. This is actually a personal deck. I mean, all the videos here, at least for the time being, they're personal decks of mine. This is not a budget list. This is my deck. This is one of my favorite decks that I own. It is not a Vendilion Click deck. It is Muldrotha the Gravetide. And let's get into it. We're going to talk about the cards, talk about my picks, and hopefully have some fun. So yeah, let's go. And as always, let's kick off the video with the Commander. This is obviously Muldrotha the Gravetide. You've probably seen her here and there. She's actually a pretty popular Commander now because she's actually very powerful for both like a value, mid-range, or combo style deck. She's a 6-drop, 3 of any, and then black, green, and blue. Legendary creature, elemental avatar. She's a 6/6. She says, during each of your turns, you may play up to one permanent card of each permanent type from your graveyard. And it says, if a card has multiple permanent types, choose one as you play it. So basically that means you can play, which means not cast, you can play lands out of your graveyard each of your turns. So you can do land, you can do Planeswalker, you can do Enchantment, creature. Like, this is artifact. This is super sweet, and we're going to capitalize on that in this deck. This is not a combo deck. You can do like Muldrotha combo. You know, you can do like Mikaeus the Unhallowed. You can do Triskelion. We're not going to be doing that here. This is going to be a more value mid-range deck with cards that I really like, and it's still a really powerful deck, but it doesn't have those combo kills that I know a lot of people don't like. So yeah, let's talk about some of the creatures. We're going to do creatures first. All right, the first creature I want to talk about that a lot of people probably aren't playing in Muldrotha, and probably for good reason, is Vendilion Click. I really like this card. I think it's really fun. It's really good in 1v1. It's okay in multiplayer, but I like it for Muldrotha because you can just keep recurring it, and it has flash, and it's just one of the cards that I really like. One of my favorite cards of all time, which is, you know, one of the reasons why it's in this deck, which is one of the reasons why I love Commander. So if you didn't know what Vendilion Click does, it's a legendary creature, fairy wizard, for 1 blue, has flash, has flying. When it enters the battlefield, you can look at target player's hand, which is cool. I mean, sometimes I just do that just to look at what my opponent is doing. And it also says you may choose a non-land card from it. If you do, that player reveals it, puts it on the bottom of their library, and then draws a card. And you can choose yourself, too. So you can be like, I don't like this, you know, forest or whatever's in my hand, and then put it on the bottom and then draw an additional card. So it could be like, you know, draw a card or replace a card. It could be looking at your opponent's hand, and that's really one of the only effects in this deck that actually lets us look at our opponent's hand. And because it's recurable and because I like it so much, I think it is worth a shot in this deck. You can play a myriad of other things instead of this. Next up, I have a super annoying creature with Spore Frog. He's a 1/1 for 1 green creature frog. And man, I used to play this like all the time back in the day. I can't believe I'm like actually jamming it in a legit deck right now. It says, sacrifice Spore Frog, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. And if you have Muldrotha out, you can basically fog once per, you know, pass around the table, which is crazy good. Spore Frog is awesome. This card, this is a common card from Prophecy of all sets. I can't believe this is worth a couple bucks these days. It used to be like, I don't know, 5-cent card or something, but yeah, I like Spore Frog. Next up, I have a pretty simple one. This is actually one of the only, I think this is the only clone effect I have in this deck, which is uncommon for me because I really love clone effects, but this one's a really good one. Clever Impersonator. It costs 2 of any 2 blue. It's a 0/0, but who cares about that? It says, you may have Clever Impersonator enter the battlefield as a copy of any non-land permanent on the battlefield. It can be an artifact. It can be an enchantment. It can be a planeswalker. This card is awesome. And because we can play it multiple times from our graveyard with Muldrotha, it's just a super sweet value card. Your opponent has something awesome. Hey, look, I want to copy it. And then you can maybe like sacrifice it later and then play it again from your graveyard. I mean, it's an amazing include in Muldrotha, in my opinion. All right, similar to Spore Frog, we have another really annoying card with Sylvan's Safekeeper. This is one of my favorite ones from back in the day as well that has actually seen a recent spike in price due to maybe Muldrotha and maybe, honestly, it's probably just Muldrotha. It is a 1-drop. It is a creature wizard, just 1 green, 1/1. Sacrifice a land. Target creature you control can't be the target of spells or abilities. this turn. So this is a really good way to protect your board, specifically a really good way to protect Muldrotha with this on the field, because you can sack a land and then you can play a land from your graveyard, so you don't really lose all that much. We do have a lot of ways to recur lands. We have kind of like a little mini land sub-theme that I'll talk about later, but I mean, Sylvan Safekeeper is a fantastic, especially at being a 1-drop, really good way to protect your dudes. Next up, we have a pair of sack counter dudes. And that's not really a thing, but I'm going to make it a thing. These are creatures that you can sacrifice to counter things. So the first one is Siren Stormtamer. It's kind of a newer card out of the Ixalan block. Just a 1-drop, 1/1 flyer for 1 blue. It's pretty good right there. Siren Pirate Wizard. You can pay a blue and sack it and counter a spell or ability that targets you or a creature you control. So once again, a really good way to protect. I mean, I'd maybe even include Sylvan Safekeeper in this bundle, but it's a really good way to protect your guys or even your face. So yeah, Siren Stormtamer is a really good one. And once again, once it's in your graveyard, you can just play it for 1 blue. Super, super good. Similarly, we have Glen Elender Archmage. This is one that recently got reprinted in Ultimate Masters. So it's seen a recent like downward turn on the price. So I would pick these up right now if they're still pretty cheap, because they got pretty expensive at one point. They got to like 15 bucks, I think. Now they're like 5. So anyway, what this is a super, super annoying card. It is a 4-drop, 3 of any, a blue, creature fairy wizard, and it says flying, pay 1 blue, sack it, counter target non-creature spell, and then it has persist. So basically, when it's put in the graveyard, it comes back into play with a -1/-1 counter, and then you can sack it again, and then you can play it again from your graveyard with Muldrotha. Glen Elender Archmage is a no-brainer in this deck, and it's just an incredibly annoying card to play against. Alright, next up we have a small creature ramp package with Satyr Wayfinder, Sakura Tribe Elder, Wood Elves, and Solemn Simulacrum. And we're going to go over these pretty quickly because I think you all know what they do already, but Satyr Wayfinder is a 2-drop, it's a 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, you can reveal the top 4 cards of your library, you can put a land card from among them into your hand and put the rest in your graveyard. So it's not really a ramp card because it just puts it in your hand, but the fact that it puts all the other stuff in your graveyard, which you can then use to play with Muldrotha, is fantastic. Satyr Wayfinder is a auto-include in Muldrotha, in my opinion. Then we have the ones that actually ramp us a little bit. Sakura Tribe Elder is a 1/1/4, just 2 mana. That's not too bad. Snake Shaman, also kind of cool. And you can sack it and search your library for a basic land. We are running 10 basic lands in this deck. And you can put that card into play tapped and then shuffle your library. So it fixes your stuff, and you can replay it again, once again, with Muldrotha. So you kind of see this theme here. A lot of value here. We can just use our commander to abuse its abilities and keep replaying our dudes. Next up, we have really common includes in Commander. We got a Wood Elves here. It's just a 1/1 for 3, 2 of any, 1 green. When it comes into play, you get to search your deck for a forest and put it into play, then you shuffle your deck afterwards. We are running a bunch of dual lands, so we can get one of the dual lands, like Overgrown Cemetery or something like that. Next up, we have Solemn Simulacrum, kind of an auto-include in a lot of Commander decks as well. It's just a 4-drop, it's a 2/2. When it enters the field, you can search your library for a basic land, put it into play tapped, then shuffle your library. And then it says when it dies, you can draw a card. So pretty good. You know, really good recursion with all of these things. They all have good ETB effects. This one has a death effect as well, so, you know, just really, really good synergy. Next up, we have my bundle of murder dudes, guys that kill stuff or kill stuff when they come into play, with Playcrafter, Shriekmaw, Knight Incarnate, and Noxious Gearhulk. Playcrafter is a pretty good upgrade from Fleshbag Marauder. It's a 3/2 for 3 when it comes into play. Each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. Each player who can't discards a card. So it punishes people who don't have anything on the field, which is awesome. They can also hit planeswalkers, which is awesome. For us, we can just keep replaying it from our graveyard because you can just sack itself, or you can sack a token or something. So Playcrafter, pretty obvious include. Same with Shriekmaw. Also reprinted in Ultimate Masters. This card is like dirt cheap right now. It costs 5, but we're not really going to pay attention to that 5. Though the 5, we could play it for the 5. It's a 3/2 elemental with Fear. It says when it comes into play, destroy a non-artifact, non-black creature, which is awesome. But it's kind of, you know, it's a little bit more narrow. It has to be non-black, has to be non-artifact, but still pretty good in Commander. And it has an Evoke for 2. So Evoke means you play it, and then you immediately have to sacrifice it for the 2. Pretty good, because we can just keep playing it from our graveyard with Muldrotha, so it's like a repeatable kill effect for only 2 mana. Really good. Next, we have a repeatable kill effect for 4 mana. So very similar. This one also has Evoke. Also costs 5. It's a 3/4 with Death Touch. It's an elemental. And when it leaves the battlefield, all creatures get -3/-3 until end of turn. So this one's a lot better to evoke. This is like a mini board wipe that you can keep playing with Muldrotha. Really, really good one. And it's a really, you know, it's a pretty new card from the newest Commander set. So really good. I like Knight Incarnate a lot. And then last but not least, we have Noxious Gearhulk. He is a beast. He costs 6. 4 of any, 2 black. He's a 5/4 with menace, and when he enters the battlefield, you can destroy another creature. If the creature is destroyed this way, you gain life equal to his toughness. So yeah, just unconditional. Kill your dude, gain some life. Next up, I have some value search manipulation. 2 of these are search, and then Rashmi's kind of in her own camp, but I want to talk about all at once just to save some time. Fauna Shaman, Sidisi Undead Vizier, and Rashmi Eternity's Crafter, all sweet cards. Fauna Shaman is a pretty sweet one for a 2-drop, just a 2/2. Elf Shaman for a green. You can tap it and discard a creature card. It has to be a creature card. Search your library for a creature card, reveal it, put it in your hand, and shuffle your library. Really cool. So you can pitch any crappy creature in your hand that you don't need, like a Wood Elves or something, and then go and get something awesome, like Rashmi even. And because you discard a creature card, you can play it again from your graveyard with Muldrotha. Once again, lots of synergy. I really like Fauna Shaman on the deck. We have Sidisi Undead Vizier. It is a 4/6 legendary creature Zombie Naga for 3 of any, 2 black. Has exploit, so when it enters the battlefield, you can sacrifice a creature. If you do sacrifice the creature, then you get to search your library for a card, put it in your hand, shuffle your library. So it demonic tutors when you play it if you sack a dude. It's really good. We want to sack some dudes. There are dudes that we want to die, and we just got to search for anything. And you can keep playing CDC from your graveyard. You can play the dude that it sacked from your graveyard. Just really, really good synergy. And then Rashmi, unlike the other 2, but it has kind of a cool effect. She's a 2/3 for 2 of any, and then a green-blue. It says, whenever you cast your first spell each turn, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a non-land card with converted mana cost less than that spell's, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. If you don't cast it, put it in your hand. So basically gets you an extra card a turn, or you just get a free card. And that is crazy, crazy good. All right, next up we have our card advantage creatures. I guess Rashmi could be a card advantage creature, but these are all cards that give us crazy good card advantage or something like that. I really like Hapless Researcher. I think it's a really, really good fit for the Muldrotha deck. It's a 1/1 for 1. When you sack it, draw a card, and then discard a card from your hand. So you can just sack it to loot. And he just costs 1, so he's really, really low cost to replay. With Muldrotha, so just an absolutely crazy good card for this deck. Then we have a Baleful Strix, also a pretty good card, pretty common one. It costs a blue and a black. It's a 1/1 flying death touch, and when it enters the battlefield, draw a card. So it blocks incredibly well. It's a low drop, immediately replaces itself. It's just a fantastic card and kind of keeps big scary flyers at bay, which I really like. Next up we have Muldrifter, which is another really popular card. This one also has Evoke, so, Evoke's a really good mechanic in this deck. Also a 5-drop, like all of the other Evoke dudes we have. 4 of any and a blue. It's a 2/2 flying elemental. When it enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards, and then has the Evoke cost of 2 of any and a blue. So you can pay it for that, and then immediately dies. So just a really good card advantage recursion engine with Muldrotha. Next up we have Underrealm Lich, a really, really good new card for this deck. This is a 5-drop, 3 of any, and then black-green. It's a 4/3 Zombie Elf Shaman. If you would draw a card, if you would draw any card, instead look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put 1 in your hand, put the rest in your graveyard, which is really, really good. And it says pay 4 life. This card gains indestructible until end of turn, tap it. So you can kind of pay some life to protect this guy. If you would draw 3 cards, actually let's do it this way since we already have this. Say I evoke Muldrifter with Underrealm Lich on the battlefield. It says draw 2 cards. I would look at the top 3 cards, pick 1, put the rest in the graveyard, and then look at the top 3 cards, pick 1, and then put. So that's like 6 cards deep, and putting the cards in the graveyard is actually really good for Muldrotha, so it's just really, really, really powerful value with Underrealm Lich. Almost a must include, in my opinion. And then last but not least, we have Consecrated Sphinx, kind of a groaner card, but I put this in all of my blue decks. I have a bunch of these from opening a shitload of Iconic Masters, so it's still not too expensive right now. You can probably get it for like 10-15 bucks. It's 4/6 flying creature Sphinx for 4 of any, 2 blue, and it says whenever an opponent draws a card, you may draw 2 cards. That's crazy. If your opponent brainstorms, you can draw 6 cards. This card's gross. It's kind of like a kill on sight type card, but yeah, it's too good to not include. Next up, I have a couple really, really powerful recursion creatures with Eternal Witness and Marin of Clan Neltoth. Eternal Witness in particular is really good in this deck. Well, let's talk about it first. So it's a 2/1. You probably already know what it does. It just costs 3, 1 of any, 2 green. Human Shaman. When it enters the battlefield, you can return target card from your graveyard to your hand. And most of this deck are permanent. So most of the deck we can play with Muldrotha, but there are a couple that we don't. we can't. We have a couple like instants and sorceries, and those ones are the cards that we can get back with Eternal Witness. So getting back some of the spicy ones, like maybe a Cryptic Command, multiple times is really, really good. So Eternal Witness is fantastic, and it just kind of helps us get our non-permanent cards back. And you know, I really like this new shiny art. And then Marin is just, she's Marin, man. You probably know what she does if you're a commander player. Incredibly powerful. She's a 3/4 legendary creature human shaman for 2 of any, a black and a green. Whenever another creature you control dies, you gain an experience counter. And it says at the beginning of your end step, choose a card in your graveyard. If that, it's a creature card. If that card's converted mana cost is less than or equal to the number of experience counters you have, put it in the battlefield. Otherwise, put it in your hand. So you always get a dude back, to your hand at least. And if you have enough experience counters, it comes immediately into play. I mean, Marin is obviously a crazy good card for this deck, and just really, really, really powerful. Next up, we have my creature-based lands package with the Gitrog Monster and Titania, Protector of Argoth. Both of these cards are really good cards for commander, as commanders, but in this deck, they're really, really good. So Gitrog Monster is a scary frog with a person's arm hanging out of its mouth. It's a 5-drop, 3 of any, and then a black and a green. It's Death Touch. And that really doesn't matter, but it's pretty good. At the beginning of your upkeep, though, sacrifice the Gitrog Monster unless you sacrifice a land. Then it also says you may play an additional land on each of your turns. Whenever one or more land cards are put into the graveyard from anywhere, draw a card. So that's from anywhere. So if we mill cards with just a myriad of things, if we with like the Underrealm Lich or Life from the Loam or anything like that, then we get to draw cards. We can play 2 lands per turn, but we have to sacrifice the land, but you know, when we do, we draw a card. Gitrog Monster is a really, really good value engine, especially since with Muldrotha out, we can play lands from our graveyard, so that is super sweet. And then we have Titania, Protector of Argoth, also super sweet. 5/3 for 3 of any, 2 green. She is an elemental, legendary creature. When she enters the battlefield, you can return a land card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So that's pretty sweet. We get a land card back, and we do have a lot of lands that sack themselves, or a lot of lands that, or a lot of like value we can get by sacking lands, you know, with cards like Gitrog Monster and the Sylvan Safekeeper and some other stuff. But it also says whenever a land you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a 5/3 green elemental creature token onto the battlefield. That's crazy. She can just make an army of 5/3s. She's a win condition in herself. Combos really well with Gitrog Monster, combos really well with Sylvan Safekeeper, and any of our sack lands. We have a lot of them. She's just an amazing card in this deck. And the final creatures I want to talk about are our finishers. And, you know, some of the other cards are finishers too, like Titania, and we do have some other, like, finishers that are not creatures, but these are kind of just our big, dumb creatures that don't really do anything but kill our opponent. So we have Kakusha the Evening Star and Wormcoil Engine, and I love both of these cards quite a bit. They're some of my favorites. Kakusha is a 5/5 flying dragon spirit for 4 of any, 2 black, and it says when he is put into, or when he dies, each opponent loses 5 life. You gain life equal to the life lost this way. That is gross. That is super gross. Back before even Commander existed, my friends and I used to play a lot of multiplayer games, you know, like 5-way, free-for-all kind of stuff. And I had a reanimator deck where I, you know, would reanimate Kakusho and like sack him and stuff, and I always die first because everyone's like, kill him. He has this annoying ass card. Yeah, Kakusho is fantastic. Just amazingly good, especially in Muldrotha. And then Wormcoil Engine is a pretty obviously powerful card. It's a 6/6 artifact worm for 6. Death Touch, lifelink. When he dies, you get a 3/3 Death Touch and a 3/3 lifelink. This is super good. Just really good value. Just a really powerful card. It can stabilize you. The lifelink is actually really important. And also just one of my favorite cards. So, yeah. This is why I really like this deck. I can play with these really powerful cards that I really like. Alright, so with the creatures out of the way, let's talk enchantments. So we have Vessel of Nascency, Sylvan Library, Mystic Remora, and Aristic Study. You've probably seen these, at least these 3 played all over the place. Vessel of Nascency is fantastic in Muldrotha. It's just a 1-drop enchantment, and you can pay a green and 1 any, sack it. Reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You can put an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker from among them into your hand, put the rest in your graveyard. So putting the rest in our graveyard is great, because we can play them with Muldrotha. And then almost the entire deck are those things. So, yeah, Vessel of Nascency is just a really good card. Basically lets us draw like 4 cards, so pretty good. We have Sylvan Library, which is just a really good card in general in any format you can play it in. It's a 2-drop. It's in Japanese, so I will do my best to tell you basically what it does. Basically, I think what it literally says is, at the beginning of your draw step, you can draw 2 additional cards. If you do, choose 2 cards in your hand drawn this turn. For each of those cards, pay 4 life or put that card on top of your library. So basically what I do with Sylvan Library out, draw 3 cards, and you get to kind of pick. Do I want to keep 1 card, or 3 cards, or 2 cards, and then how much damage do I want to take? That's kind of like how Sylvan Library practically works. Super good card. And then Mystic Remora is just crazy, crazy, crazy good in this deck. It's a 1-drop enchantment, has cumulative upkeep 1, so that means on the next turn we have to pay 1 mana or we sacrifice it, and then we have to pay 2 mana or sacrifice it, and then 3 mana and sacrifice, and 4 mana. So every turn it increases the cost by 1. But that doesn't really matter because it's a 1-drop. So we can sacrifice it and then immediately play it again with Muldrotha. And it says when an opponent successfully casts a non-creature card, you may draw a card. That player may pay 4 to counter this effect. And there's a lot of non-creatures in Commander, man. Anytime they play a Signet, you're like, hey, you want to pay 4 or draw a card? Yeah, you're going to be drawing a lot of cards with Mystic Remora. And then Ristic Study is also one of those kind of cards. 3-drop, enchantment, 2 of any, blue. Whenever opponent plays any spell, you can draw a card unless that player plays an additional 1. So you're always just like, hey, do you want to pay 1 more? If not, I can draw a card. Just remember to keep track of your triggers and do that. I'm pretty good about that, but I know some people can forget about these pretty easily. All right, next up we have our enchantment-based removal, which is a lot. You can see we have a lot of removal in this deck, but it's really good because it's like recurring removal, and they're like very specific. Control Magic is an amazing card, and for 4 mana, 2 of any, 2 blue, you get to gain control over the enchanted creature. And yeah, if the creature dies, you can play Control Magic again from your graveyard, steal another creature. You can use one of our sack outlets and sack the creature, and then play Control Magic and gain control of it. Super, super good. A classic card. And then we have Seal of Primordium. This is basically like a naturalize or a disenchant, but it's on an enchantment. For 1 of any and a green, it's enchantment. You can sacrifice it and destroy. Here, let's get the soul card in focus. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. Yeah, it's super good. Just blow up anything. We can keep playing it from our graveyard, etc., etc. Really good. Seal of Doom, exact same thing, except it destroys a non-black creature. So for 2 of any and a black, it's an enchantment. You can sack it and destroy a non-black creature. Can't be regenerated. Once again, just a really, really good recurring removal spell. Pernicious Deeds is one of my favorite cards ever printed. It was kind of what I was known for, among my friends in our play group back in the day. It's an enchantment for 1 of any, I was going to say a blue, 1 of any, a black, and a green. You can pay X and sack it and destroy each artifact, creature, and enchantment with converted mana cost 8 or X or less, which is super good. And you can play it again from your graveyard, so it's just like recurring board wipes, super good. And then kind of similar to that, Phyrexian Scriptures, one of our newer cards. It's an enchantment saga for 2 of any and 2 black. When you play it, you get a +1/+1 counter on one of your creatures, and it becomes an artifact creature. And the next step, destroy all non-artifact creatures, which is super good. And then step 3, exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards. So the first turn you play it, you get a +1/+1 counter on your dude, becomes an artifact creature. Your next turn, blow up all non-artifact creatures. And the next turn, you exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards. It's so good, and it hosts other graveyard-based decks, and there's a lot of graveyard-based decks in Commander. It's a board wipe, kind of a pseudo pump spell. The +1's not super good in this deck, but it can save. You just put that on Muldrotha so she doesn't die. But yeah, fantastic. Next up, we have our tiny little enchantment-based reanimation package with Animate Dead and Necromancy. So these are pretty standard cards, but they're really good in Muldrotha because they're enchantments, so we can play them multiple times. So Animate Dead, 2-drop, 1 of any, 1 black, one of the most classic Magic cards. You can enchant a dead creature, comes into play with this enchanting it, and then it gets a -1, -0. Pretty good. Necromancy is the exact same thing, except it does not get -1, -0, and you can choose to play it as an instant. And if you do, you have to sacrifice it, which is still really cool. So you can play it as an instant to do a surprise blocker or something like that, and then you have to sacrifice it. No big deal. Play it your next turn with Muldrotha. All right, now we're on to our artifacts, and here is our artifact-based ramp. We have a lot of it. Some of them are pretty simple, so I'm not going to go over them very quickly. So, here, let's go over these. These are pretty basic ones. I mean, Mana Vault, costs 1, doesn't untap. You can pay 4 during upkeep, and if you do, you can untap it. If it's tapped, you take 1 damage, but you can tap it and add 3. Really, really good. Just really good ramp. Helps us get to Muldrotha. Helps us play our high-cost cards. Mana Vault, no-brainer. Soul Ring, no-brainer. I'm not really going to talk about it. The Signets, also kind of a no-brainer. Just really good ramp. Not really going to talk about them. And then we have some more interesting cards with Muldrotha. They synergize with this deck really well, but a lot of people play these in Commander anyway. So Mind Stone is a 2-drop. You can tap it to add 1 colorless, pay 1 of any, tap it, and sacrifice it and draw a card. So it's kind of like a recurring draw engine with Muldrotha if you need it. So really good. Same with Commander Sphere. And by the way, these will cost the same to recur, because Mind Stone costs 2 to play, and then 1 to sacrifice. And then Commander Sphere will cost 3 to play. Actually, no, you can play it, and then tap it, and then sacrifice it, and then use the mana to play it. So, actually, Commander Sphere is actually a little bit cheaper to recur with Muldrotha. But you can tap it and add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool of your commander's identity, and you can just sack it and draw a card. So, yeah, amazing. Just recurring, draw, really good. Next up, we have some of our little bauble cards. These two are a little bit unique, but let's talk about Expedition Map first. So Expedition Map, 1 drop. You can pay 2 and tap it and sack it, and then you get to search your library for any land, put it in your hand, and then shuffle your library. So that's really good in getting some of our key land cards, like maybe, maybe good old Merit Lodge. We can go get our Dark Depths. We can get our Thespian Stage. We'll talk about that as we go on a little bit more. But just get whatever you need. Really, really good. Can get Urborg. Can get whatever. And then these two are really good in this deck. We have Urza and Mishra's Bauble. And they're not really good in most commander decks, but in this deck, they're super good because they cost 0 to play. What Mishra's Bauble does, it's a 0-cost artifact. You can tap it and sack it to choose a card at random from a player's hand. You get to look at the card, and then ignore this ability if that player has no cards in their hand, blah, blah, blah. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So it's 0 cost, draw a card on the next turn's upkeep, and you can kind of pick a card from your opponent's hand and look at it. Just a really good, just 0 cost draw card. Super good. Play it from your graveyard for 0, get to draw another card. Just, I love it with Muldrotha. Mishra's Bauble the exact same way. This one, except when you sack it, you get to look at the top card of your, any player's library. So you can look at your own, look at the top card of another player's, and then you get to draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So just really, really good, 0 cost, recurring stuff. I had more cards like this in the deck, but I kind of ended up cutting them for some more spicy stuff. Next up, we have our only artifact-based removal with Oblivion Stone, and this is a really good one from Muldrotha because it sacrifices itself, and we can play it again from the graveyard. So it's a 3-drop. You can pay 4 and tap it to put a fate counter on a permanent, and you can pay 5 and tap it and sack it to destroy each non-land permanent without a fate counter, then remove all fate counters. So you can kind of protect your stuff and then blow up everything. Just super, super good, and the fact that we can replay it, just, no-brainer. Final artifact that I want to talk about today is Mindslaver. It is a 6-drop. You can pay 4 and tap it and sack it. You control target player's next turn. I really like this card with Muldrotha. This is kind of like the only wombo combo in the deck. If it's a 1v1 game and we get Mindslaver and 10 mana and we have Muldrotha on the field, we win. We just take our control of our opponent's turn every single turn because you sack it and then you just play it again on your next turn and then sack it and then play it and sack it. You just have infinite turns. You just take your opponent's turn and you have infinite turns. So with Muldrotha, 1v1 game, it's infinite turns. In a multiplayer commander game, it's not quite as powerful, and you don't have to be that guy. You don't have to be a dick about it. You can be kind of more fun about it and kind of spice it up. I do like Mindslaver, but I don't blame you if you don't like it. It's really all up to the user and how they want to abuse it. And we sometimes do abuse it. Alright, next up we're going to talk about our little Planeswalker package. And we have just Lilies and Jays. We have the best Planeswalkers ever printed. Not really. We don't have Karn in this deck. But let's talk about these guys. I really like them because they are a permanent type that we can play with Muldrotha. And I really like the low-costing ones because it allows us to do other stuff in our turn as well. So, Jace the Mind Sculptor. I mean, he's fucking Jace the Mind Sculptor. 4-drop, 2 of any, 2 blue. His +2, you get to look at the top, or he also has 3 loyalty. +2, you can look at the top card of a player's library. You can put it on the bottom if you want. 0, draw 3 cards, then put 2 from your hand on the top of your library in any order. -1, return a creature to its owner's hand. And then -12, exile all cards from target player's library. Then that player shuffles his or her hand into his or her library. So basically, just a really, really good value card in this deck. Doesn't have any cool shenanigan stuff, but you can maybe do some stuff by sneaking stuff on top of your deck. And that kind of stuff, but honestly, he's just a really cool value card, and I love Jace the Mind Sculptor, and I have a couple of him, and he's not great in Commander, so I like putting him in Commander decks that actually are, it makes sense and it's fun. Same with Liliana the Veil, actually. My favorite Planeswalker ever made. If you see my other videos, you'll know I have a signed by Steve Argyle Liliana the Veil playmat. One of my favorite cards, just ever, and it's not good in Commander, but it's kind of good in this deck. So she is a 3-drop, she has 3 loyalty, her +1, each player discards a card, and that's not that bad for us, because if we discard a land or something like that, we can just play it again with Muldrotha. And then the -2 is target player sacrifices a creature. This can be really good for killing indestructible dudes, though, you don't want to pick the tokens player and they're just going to sacrifice a token. And then her -6, which almost never happens, but could happen. Separate all permanents target player controls into 2 piles. That player sacrifices all permanents in the pile of his or her choice. Actually really good in Commander because people have a lot of permanents, but you almost never get there. But for 3 mana, just keep playing it from your graveyard. She can get real annoying. Next up we have Jace Beleren, also a 3-drop. He's got 3 loyalty. He says +2, each player draws a card. Pretty sweet. -1, target player draws a card. And then -10, which is horrible in Commander. Target player puts the top 20 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Honestly, if I ever got that high, I might just do it on myself. Just have way more value with Muldrotha. Or just maybe if your opponent's decks are really low or something, you can maybe kill him. But honestly, he's just a really, really good draw engine for the deck. And at 3 mana, man, just keep playing him. And then finally for the Planeswalkers, we have Liliana the Last Hope. Also a 3-drop Planeswalker with 3 loyalty. Her +1 is up to 1 target creature gets weakness, basically, or -2, -1 until your next turn. That's pretty good. Her -2 is really good, actually, with Muldrotha. You're going to put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. Then you return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So basically, you're going to mill 2 cards, and then return any creature from your graveyard to your hand. So if you don't have Muldrotha on the field, you can still recur some creatures, and if you do, then the 2 cards you put in your graveyard, you can still use with Muldrotha. Really, really sweet. And at only 3-drop, you can still kind of kill some small pesky creatures. And she does have a -7 emblem, which I guess I'll talk about, but I don't know. We never get it. Oh, I've never seen this go off. You get an emblem with, at the beginning of your end step, put X 2/2 black zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield, where X is 2 plus the number of zombies you control. We don't have a lot of zombies, honestly. And yeah, that's probably not going to happen. But, it could. And, she's Lily. Lily's great. Alright, and before we start talking about the lands, let's talk about the 6 instants and sorceries that we run on this deck. And they are very, very, very powerful instants and sorceries. Entomb is amazing in this deck. It's basically a 1-drop instant speed demonic tutor if we have Muldrotha on the field. It's just, 1 black mana, instant. Search your library for any card, put it into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. And if you have Muldrotha on the field, it's basically just like putting in your hand, because then you can just immediately play it. Assuming it's a permanent. Just amazing. Then we just have straight up demonic tutor. 1 of any, black, search your library for a card, put it in your hand, shuffle your library. Just amazing. I mean, demonic tutor, why would you not run it if you own it? If you don't own it, I don't blame you. It's kind of an expensive card, but it's a really, really sweet one. I slam this in every single black deck that I have. And once again, we can recur these with our Eternal Witness that we have. So, these are cards that we can still get back from our graveyard. And then Intuition is uniquely awesome in... Oh, it's just an awesome card in general, but it's extra awesome in Muldrotha. It's also kind of a really expensive card, but if you got it, I would definitely play it in Muldrotha. It's an instant for 2 of any and 1 blue. You can search your library for 3 cards, reveal them to opponent. Your opponent chooses 1, then you put that into your hand and the rest in your graveyard. It's basically like searching your deck for 3 cards. It's almost like a Buried Alive, where you search for 3 creatures and immediately put them in your graveyard. But this one gets you all of them. You can pick anything. And with Muldrotha on the field, you can just play him immediately anyway. It's amazing. It's like just searching your deck for 3 things at instant speed. Fantastic. Next we have Life from the Loam, part of our lands package. Really, really good one. For 1 of any and a green, you can return up to 3 target lands from your graveyard to your hand. And if we're sacking all of our lands, we're going to want to do that. And it says Dredge. If you would draw a card, that's Dredge 3, by the way. If you draw a card, instead put exactly 3 cards from the top of your library into your graveyard. If you do, return this card from your graveyard to your hand, otherwise draw a card. Dredge is really good in Muldrotha. I'm not a big fan of Dredge in general, but Life from the Loam is sweet. And by in general, I do like the Dredge mechanic. I just don't like, Dredge in competitive Magic. It is super not fun. Maybe it's fun to play with. I've never played with it. I've only played against it, and it's not fun to play against. Anyway, I do like Life from the Loam, and it has a lot of synergy with the deck. Next up we have Cyclonic Rift. It is Cyclonic Rift. I'm not really going to talk about it that much. It's super powerful. Returns all of the crap to your opponent's hand. The fact that it's an instant doesn't really matter, because once again, we can get it with Eternal Witness back, and it's too powerful not to put in. I would put this in every single blue deck. It probably should be banned. And then last but certainly not least, Cryptic Command. I love this card. I think everyone loves this card. It's just super powerful, and once again, really good to get back with Eternal Witness. And what it does, if we can focus, is a 4-drop, 3 blue, 1 of any, choose 2, counter target spell, return target permanent to its owner's hand, tap all creatures your opponents control, that's actually a really good one, and draw a card. I really like to tap all creatures your opponents control because you can use it to kill an opponent. So say one player is attacking another player, you can play this before blockers are declared, after attackers are declared, and tap everything, and you just have someone kill another person. It's awesome. Cryptic Command is sweet, and obviously you can just counter spells and draw cards and stuff, but yeah, I love it. And before we start getting into the lands, I want to go over something that I recently added to this deck that I love, and I'm not sure how good it is, but I think it's awesome. I put Marit Lage, Dark Depths, Thespian Stage, Vampire Hexmage, and Urborg was always here, but Urborg is really good with these cards. So what Dark Depths is, it's a legendary snow land. Also, it's awesome. Enters the battlefield with 10 ice counters. You can pay 3 to remove an ice counter from it, but we're not really going to do that. We can. But it also says, when Dark Depths has no ice counters from it, sack it. If you do, create the Marit Lage token. 2020 Flying Indestructible. Super cool. And while this is a really powerful, just card in general, has its own deck in Modern and some other formats. Or is it Legacy? Is it Legacy or Modern? One of those ones. It combos really well with cards like Thespian Stage. Thespian Stage says you can tap it, add 1 mana of any color to your mana, or add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool. You can pay 2 of any, tap it, and it becomes a copy of a land and gains its ability. So you can copy Dark Depths. You'll have to sacrifice your Dark Depths because it becomes, it's a legendary, but it doesn't come into play with those counters because it becomes a copy of it. So basically you get a free 20/20 if you have Thespian Stage and Dark Depths on your battlefield, and it's like a giant Cthulhu monster. It is so cool. The fact that you can recur this from your graveyard with Muldrotha is amazing. I mean, I've been really trying to find a good place to put Dark Depths, and the fact that I got one recently, and the fact that I've been jamming this Muldrotha more, it's just like the perfect deck to play this in, and it's so fun. Also, Vampire Hexmage, another really good piece of the combo, and it's just a really good card by itself. It's a 2/2 first strike for 2 black mana, has great artwork, and it says you can sack it and remove all counters from target permanent. And what permanent are we going to remove those counters from? We're going to remove them from Dark Depths, or your opponent's Planeswalker, or their like 50/50 guy, or something like that. But you can move them from your Dark Depths and get a 20/20. And then the fact that we're playing Muldrotha, we can play both of these cards again. So both of these will be in our graveyard. After we do the combo, we'll have our Marit Lage on the battlefield. And then if your opponent messes with it, just play Muldrotha, play them both from your graveyard. You just do it all over again. The reason I like Urborg here, let's kind of get rid of these kind of things, is because Dark Depths I don't include in my land count because it doesn't actually add any mana. But if you have Urborg out, it becomes a swamp, and you can tap it for black mana. So that's really sweet. I mean, Urborg in general is just a really fantastic card, but I think it goes really well with like Dark Depths, Thespian Stage, and Vampire Hexmage. I would include these. If you're going to play Dark Depths at all, I would include all of these cards. So, yeah, that's my little Dark Depths package in this deck. I think it fits really well into Muldrotha. Alright, now let's start talking about the other lands, and we're going to do rapid fire. We're going to do a bunch of mana-making lands, and then we're going to do our cool utility lands. So, Command Tower, no-brainer. We have 4 fetches. You can just include any of the fetches that can get any of the stuff, but these are the ones that I have access to right now. I have 11 commander decks, so my fetches are running pretty thin right now. But these are the ones I can use in this deck. And, at first I had just my on-color fetches, but I was like, I got an extra Flooded Strand. Might as well just throw it in there. Fantastic with Muldrotha because you can keep recurring it, all that kind of stuff. Combos well with Gitrock Monster, combos with Titania, just amazing. Then we have our 3 on-color Shock lands, kind of a no-brainer here. We have our 3 on-color Filter lands, also no-brainer here. Our 3 on-color, what are these called, like check lands? If you check to see if they have a basic land type, once again, no-brainer. And this one's a foil one, though it's kind of hard to tell. It's nice. And then we have our 3, once again, on-color shrines, or temples. Our 3 on-color temples. I don't know why I was going to call them shrines. Come into play tapped. These are the only ones that only come into play tapped. But we get a Scry, which I think is really good. It's worth it. Oh wait, Fetid Pools comes into play tap too. But it's an island swamp. And you can cycle it. So, I do like this one. And then we have our Morphic Pool. If I had more of these, or if they printed more of this type, I would immediately jam them in this deck. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you have 2 or more opponents. And in a multiplayer commander game, that's just amazing. Enters the play untapped. And then we have Ancient Tomb. It just adds 2 colorless mana to your mana pool, and you take 2 damage. I love this card. So happy to get a couple of these in my Ultimate Masters boxes, because I needed them. Because I only had a couple, and now I got more, and yeah, now a lot of decks with Ancient Tombs. And then we have basic lands. We have 10 basic lands here. I have more islands because I have a lot of blue pips in this deck, so I did recently change some stuff around, so I might have to tweak these. I might have to add more swamps and forests and maybe cut back on a couple of these islands, but yeah, they're just basic lands. And then finally, let's talk about the utility lands, and we do have a good number of these. Let's talk about the least interesting ones. Strip Mine, you just sack it and blow up any land. Crazy good in Muldrotha. It's really honestly dumb and kind of broken. Same with Wasteland, sack it, destroy any non-basic land. It's really stupid in Muldrotha. And once again, we have like Life from the Loam and a lot of like land-based stuff. We can get these back in multiples and make people have a bad day. Dust Bowl, very similar to Wasteland, but you know, we can't run 2 Wastelands, so we're gonna run Dust Bowl. This one is you can pay 3 and sacrifice the land to destroy target non-basic land. Just really good, just repeatable. Even if you don't have Muldrotha on the field, if you don't have a Wasteland, you can just start sacking your like forests and your islands and crap to blow up your opponent's non-basic stuff. Now we have more interesting things. Let's talk about this one first. Phyrexian Tower, pretty good. Tap it, add a colorless. You can sack a creature and add 2 black. And we have a lot of creatures in the deck that can be sacrificed to various things, and this is just a good sack outlet. We can just sack our creatures if our opponent's going to do some shenanigan stuff. I used to run High Market in this deck, but Phyrexian Tower I think is better. So yeah, we're running Phyrexian Tower over High Market right now. And then the final card, Command Beacon. Command Beacon is amazingly broken with Muldrotha. It is a land. You can tap it to add a colorless. You can tap it and sack it and put a commander from your hand, or commander into your hand from your command zone. Same Muldrotha has been played, I don't know, 5 times, and has commander tax of 10, sitting in our, command zone. We can play our Command Beacon, sack it, bring Muldrotha back to our hand, play it for her 6, and then immediately play Command Beacon from our graveyard. So this basically gets around commander tax with Muldrotha. Command Beacon is crazy good, and helps us really beat our commander tax. Alright guys, and that was my Muldrotha the Gravetide deck. Let me know what you thought of the video in the comments down below. Like I said, this channel is very small, and I can use all of the support that I can get. In future videos, depending on the type of viewers that I get, if you guys are really like seasoned Magic players, I can skip over some of the cards like, Eternal Witness. I obviously try to skip over like Soul Ring and stuff, and just kind of skip over some of the more commonly known cards, or just kind of say that I have them in the deck and not talk about them quite too much. I went over a lot of the cards just a little bit, just so I can, if you're a new player or if you haven't played in forever and you don't know what, like, I don't know, if you don't know what Dark Depths does or something like that, I figured I'd cover all my bases for some of these early videos. Let me know what you guys think, and yeah, tell your friends about it, and I will see you next time for some more Commander content. What do we have coming on the horizon? We have Ravnica Allegiance coming up soon. I'm going to do some box openings of that, kind of talk about what I think about the cards for Commander. I'm going to do a top 10 Ravnica Allegiance cards for Commander, and I'm going to do more deck strategy videos. I'm not sure which one I'm going to do next. Maybe Vampires? Maybe Artifacts? I'm not sure. But I'll see you guys next time.